Every year, I take a trip from my hometown of Springfield, Illinois, out west to California to meet up with some friends. We've done it every year for the past 5 years. It's always a great week and something I look forward to. I make the day plus drive every year as well. I find it more fulfilling that way. I can see the country, and it's nice alone time on the journey. Also, it's pretty nice having a car out there while we are doing various stuff. Eliminates the need for Uber and stuff like that, and just saves us all money in the end. I'm a bit of a cheapskate though. I don't like paying $100 a night plus for a hotel when I figure I can just stop somewhere and sleep in my car. The plan was to stop at most 2 nights, maybe only one if I could manage to push through. I planned out my route before I left home. Well, at least a little bit. I had a general idea of where I'd want to stop for the night. I figured night 1 I'd stop somewhere in Nebraska. I packed up my car and I hit the road. By the time midnight came on the first day, I was still on the road. I was getting tired and starting to try and find a good place to stop. Fortunately, I was on schedule pretty good. I was in the middle of Nebraska somewhere and saw a sign for a rest stop in a mile. It ended up working out perfectly. I pulled into the rest area, and it was basically dead at this hour, which I kinda expected. It wasn't like I was in a super populated area of the country in the first place. It was a typical highway rest stop area. A parking lot for cars, obviously, and the semi-trucks, with a small building with bathrooms and vending machines. I went to the bathroom. As I opened the door, I almost ran straight into someone coming out. I said, "Oh, my bad," and laughed a little bit. He didn't seem to think it was all that funny. He walked past me, not saying anything, seemingly kind of annoyed. It was whatever. I wasn't there to make friends. I got back to the car and started putting blankets up on the windows before I went to sleep. It was just something I always did, mostly because it blocked out any light from getting inside and disturbing my sleep. I laid the seat back and tried to go to sleep. Admittedly, it was harder to fall asleep this way, but I was saving money, and I had done it multiple times before. Even if it took a little longer to fall asleep than normal, it was worth it. I was tossing and turning, trying to get comfortable for about 20 minutes. I heard this slight tap noise on the back passenger side door, basically right by my head. When I say slight, I mean to the point I barely heard it. It sounded like a bug or something had hit the car. I ignored it, but about 5 minutes later I heard it again, this time a little louder. Still not loud enough for me to get up and do something, but loud enough to be curious. My senses were more heightened now. Right by my head, on the back driver's side door, the door handle was being pulled from the outside. There was no doubt what the noise was. Fortunately, the car doors were locked. It sounded like the person was trying to be super careful and not make a ton of noise. I raised my seat up and turned on the car. My headlights came on, and they revealed 2 random men in front of my car, basically on my hood. When the headlights came on, they ran off to my left. I pulled down the blankets on that side of the car, and I even saw a third guy over with the 2 men I saw by the hood. He must have been the one trying to open my door. I even recognized one of the men to be the same guy I had ran into at the bathroom earlier that night. I pulled out of there and back onto the highway. I drove a little further up and stopped at a store parking lot for the night. I think I was just more shocked than anything. This was one of those things you see happen to everyone else, but not you. The fact that it happened to me in the moment, I was just shocked. I made it to California the next day, and enjoyed my week trip with my friends, just like every year. I still make that drive out, and I do still sleep in my car whenever I stop. No more rest stops though. I try to pick out places with more people present. I was taking a short road trip up north to visit family for my nephew's high school graduation last year. I was only planning on being gone a couple of days, and the drive was only about 6 hours. The drive up to their place was normal. I was there for 2 days and then I had to head back home. Unfortunately, it was raining and was supposed to rain pretty much all the way back home. I don't like driving in rain if I can avoid it, but there was no avoiding it today. I started making my way. About halfway into the drive, I was pretty hungry and also had to go to the bathroom. There was a sign for a rest stop not too far up, and I figured that would be perfect. I'd rest up real quick and grab a quick snack, then I'd be good until I got back home. I walked around a bit at the rest stop to stretch my legs and just get out of the car. It was still drizzling out, definitely not downpouring. I walked for about 5 minutes, went to the restroom, and grabbed a quick snack out of the vending machine. I got back in the car and the windshield was super fogged up. You know how whenever it rains, your breath can fog up windows in a car? Well, that's what was happening, even though I had just been outside for a total of about 10 minutes. I had to crank the air up to defog the windows before I could leave. I got on the road to merge back onto the highway from the rest stop. I glanced over my shoulder to make sure no cars were coming, and when I did, out of the corner of my eye in the back seat of the car, I saw the very top of someone's head. I turned to the back seat and there was some random guy laying in the floorboard of my car. He got up when I noticed him and put his hand over his mouth and said, "Don't freak out." I slammed on the brakes and pulled over to the side of the highway. I reached into my glove compartment and pulled out one of my pistols. I have a license to carry and usually always have a firearm somewhat close to me. The man in my back seat saw the gun and bolted out the door and into the woods on the side. I sped out of there and back onto the highway. I don't know what that guy was thinking or planning. Probably was going to wait for an opportunity to rob me somehow. The only explanation I can think of is he hopped into my car at the rest stop while I was out. The foggy windows made sense. I didn't lock my car because I usually never do. I come from a small town where most people rarely lock doors. I lock my door from now on in public places though. It really only takes one close call to change some habits. There's a small park with woods behind it in my town. My friends and I would sometimes go back there to smoke and just mess around on the weekends. I'm a junior in high school, and there's nothing really much else to do in our small town. There's an old abandoned rest stop behind the woods I mentioned earlier. Pretty much everyone in our town knows about it. You can still see the off-ramp on the highway where you would get off to go to it. The signs were taken down though, and it's been completely abandoned since I can remember. My friends and I were hanging out in our usual spot in the park, by the woods. My friend Hunter suggested that we walk through the woods and go explore it. The woods really weren't that deep. You maybe only had to walk a half a mile and you would be at the rest stop. Surprisingly, no one in our friend group had ever been exploring over there before. Most kids our age from our town had been over there at least once. We figured, why not? There was nothing else to do in our small little town. It was a Friday night, around 9 p.m. It was pretty cold out, but we didn't mind. We cut through the woods and emerged onto the property of the old rest stop. It was completely dead. No lights, no cars, and the only sounds were coming from the cars that would periodically pass by on the freeway, right on the other side. There was only one small building with what I'm assuming was bathrooms. Other than that, the place was pretty small. Obviously, there was a parking lot and a small field of grass that I assumed was once property of this rest stop. We walked up toward the small building, being super loud and obnoxious. I guess at the time we weren't really worried about being caught or anything. There was a super old vending machine next to the bathrooms, and an old map of our state was hanging on the wall. It was weathered obviously, but you could still tell what it was. We did come here to explore after all, and walked around the building, mostly to see if there was anything of interest that had been left behind. There was some graffiti on the outside wall, which I suppose was to be expected. We hadn't explored the bathrooms yet. Not that there could be much of interest in there. It was just a bathroom, after all. We were already here anyways, so we might as well say we explored the whole thing. All three of us, including me, stepped into the men's bathroom. It was so dark in there that you couldn't even see your hand in front of your face. We tried to find a light switch and hoped there was a chance it would work, but we couldn't find one. Hunter pulled his phone out of his pocket and turned the flashlight on. Yep, just an old bathroom, as I had expected. There were 3 stall doors. 2 of them were open, and 1 was shut. I was kinda ready to get back at this point. We had already really seen everything here that was worth looking at. Hunter walked further into the bathroom with his phone still in his hand. He was over near the first stall door, which was open. The next about 20 seconds is kind of a blur, but basically when Hunter was over at the stall doors, he had his flashlight face down toward the floor. Hunter turned to face us at the door, and there was a footstep. None of our footsteps, but footsteps from inside the closed stall door. The concrete in the room made the sound echo pretty loudly. Hunter screamed, "Go!" and the 3 of us just sprinted out of the bathroom toward the woods. We got back to the playground and all caught our breaths. I don't even know what really happened. I just heard the footstep and Hunter was yelling, and then we all ran. Hunter told us that when his flashlight was facing the ground, he could see a boot on the ground in the other stall right next to the one where he was standing. He said he saw the person take a step forward, and that was what we had all heard. That's when he told us to run, and we did. It never really occurred to me that some homeless person or something could be living in there, even though looking at the situation now, it would make total sense. Looking back, it was pretty scary seeing and hearing Hunter when he saw that person's foot in there. I guess now at least we have a pretty interesting story to tell.